All right. So if I hit all the right buttons, we are live on YouTube. Hello and welcome, my friends, to a very special episode of Talk Power BI. We do have a special guest today. I'm just gonna check into the room. If you are just joining, do say hello. And let's see. And hold on, I'm gonna introduce our special guest in just a moment. You can hopefully see him on the screen. But let me check how's it going in our live room. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Awesome. Looks like quite a few of you are here. All right, let's do shout outs to. Actually, you know what? Let me introduce Matt. So, uh, uh, many of you would probably already know Matt. Oh gosh, hold on, guys. Let's see. Where's the audio coming from? Somebody is brewing tea or something. Do you hear that, Matt?
A little bit. It's not too bad.
Huh. Okay. Okay, it went away. All right.
Maybe they live near an airport.
Ah, okay, yes, could have been that too. All right, that worked good. Jet taking off, yeah. So Matt and I almost started our journey on Power BI in a similar fashion and around exactly the same time. But what ties us together is actually a lot more than that. And I think the key thing there is the passion. So when I look at Matt, when I sit through his trainings or his sessions at the Power BI Summit and other places or talk to him, clearly he has that same passion, and I see that reflected back where he is just there to kind of help the community and help people make that leap into Power BI, because we've both kind of experienced how big of a transformation it can be. So Matt, in the video link on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the details, you have links to find more about Matt, his website, follow him on his blog. There are links to his course and his book as well. So check all of that out. Matt, is there something that you would want to tell us about yourself?
Um, yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I
Awesome.
don't know if everyone knows, so it's like 5 a.m. Saturday morning here in Sydney. We've finished winter now, so it's into spring.
All
But
right.
it's great to be here. And you're right. Yeah, I love doing this stuff too. And I think we've both been doing this for about 4 years, right? I'm into my fifth year now, which is actually pretty
Wow.
remarkable. And when I started Power BI, it was like nothing. It wasn't even a thing. It was Power Pivot back then, right? So everything was Power
Yeah.
Pivot. In fact, Power Query, I'd only really just learned about myself when it started way back. And I've been teaching classes for 4 years, and I love teaching people. And
Mm-hmm.
the content has evolved over those 4 years as the product has evolved. But
Mm-hmm.
but a lot more business people interested now in
Yeah.
in Power BI than so way back in the early Power Pivot days. It was really a real hardcore Excel people that had discovered Power Pivot and wanted to come along. And these days, just a lot more regular business people want to learn Power BI, and that's great, and opened up a whole world. I don't know if you saw, Avi, on my blog. I refreshed my blog a few weeks ago on the interest in Power BI over
I
time
did.
using
I did
Google
see that.
Trends.
Yeah. Oh
And when I
gosh.
when I first wrote that was December 2014 when I first wrote that article, and sort of
Mm-hmm.
Power Pivot and Power Query there, and Power BI wasn't
Yeah.
even a blip. And Power BI, it's just taken off. It's just amazing, the number of
Yeah.
people that are getting involved now. So,
Oh,
yeah. So, I
right.
mean, my background, I'm basically a business guy. I spent some time in IT, but I'm basically a business guy, and I think that's why I enjoy teaching people. I've always liked helping people. I've always actually had a bit of a passion and a skill in IT tools, or when I say IT tools, I say
Mm-hmm.
technical business tools would be a better description. So Excel, I've always been an Excel guy. I've loved Access.
Yeah.
Use these tools to the fullest degree to help me succeed in my job. I
Yeah.
was always the guy at Coke where, when something didn't work, or, someone
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to do something, it was always, hey, Matt, come over here, help me out. So I always
Yeah.
love doing that sort of stuff. And
Oh,
so it's great. I
oh
get to
my
do that all
gosh.
the time now.
Yeah, Matt, there's so much packed into that, and I feel like I wanna dig into all of that and ask you questions there, but I'm gonna hold myself. So, guys, we invited you for a very special topic today, and we're gonna have Matt share. Uh, Gosh, and you know, guys, I'm having some trouble with my go-to meeting. Dang it, I actually don't know how to solve it. So Matt, can you try sharing your screen? See how that
Okay,
works.
let's see. I'll
And
make sure I get the right one. I don't know which screen is which. Um, do I have to ask if I can share my
yes,
screen?
yes. Oh, there we go. Whew. Man, somehow the go-to meeting was not showing up. So, so yeah, I'm gonna make you presenter, and we're gonna go from there. So, while that's coming up, I'll set up some. Hey, Matt, can you? Oh, gosh, send me another chat message. That's something really weird about my go-to meeting here.
A chat message in GoToMeeting?
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Whew, it's scaring me today. Usually it's rock solid. Okay, I'm not gonna minimize it. If I minimize it, it goes away. So guys, let me share some background. So I have, so variables is a relatively new feature when it comes to Power BI, specifically DAX. And it took me some time to warm up to it. I mean, I was used to using DAX for a long time before that. So like, what do I need variables? But slowly I have grown to appreciate it and have used them more and more. But I was lucky to be co-presenting with Matt at the Power BI Summit. We presented a day-long session together. So I presented, and then I kind of sat down and watched Matt present. And the way he shared variables, man, I loved it. And so here he is, and and he's gonna walk us through that. So Matt, take it away.
Okay, great. Now I just want to make sure, because I've got a couple of screens happening here, and I've got a camera here, and I look. So what can you see on my screen? Have I got the right screen
We're
shared?
looking at the relationship view, and it looks zoomed in.
AdventureX.
Oh yeah, now it's zoomed in.
Okay,
Great.
okay, perfect. So yeah, so look, I'm the same as you, Avi. I really missed the whole variable thing, and it was actually I was actually doing a live chat. It was an offline chat with PowerPivot Pro, Marco Russo, and Casper de Jong.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the end of the session, Austin did a whip around, and he said, what's the best feature? What do you love the most? And Casper de Jong, he said variables is the best thing that's been delivered in DAX in the last handful of years, and hardly anyone uses it. And I thought, well, I'm one of them. So,
Yeah.
and it was really that was really the thing that got me thinking, okay, there's obviously something here. I need to go and have a look at this. So that's what I did. And yeah, you'll probably be aware. In fact, let me get started, and I'll show you on the screen sort of, and we'll just sort of make it up a little bit as we go. So I've got AdventureWorks here, and I always lay out my AdventureWorks data model using the way that Rob Colley taught me. So
Yes.
lookup tables at the top, you got to look up to see them.
Uh-huh.
Data table at the bottom. So my brain doesn't function if it's in any other
Yeah. I
format.
use
So that's the way.
another analogy, which I think came from Rob as well, which is kind of relationships flow downhill. And I
Yeah,
say
exactly.
water flows downhill, relationships flow downhill. So I arrange them that way. So great. So got it.
Absolutely. So so we're going to do a custom time intelligence. I thought that would be a good pattern. Now, there's different ways of doing things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to do custom time intelligence.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of rules around custom time intelligence. So if
Mm-hmm.
you've got a day level calendar and you're trying to do year to date, you can use the inbuilt time intelligence, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But I want to
Actually,
use,
if I may, what I'll say is, so guys, everybody who's watching, look at the technique. Look at the technique is just, it's kind of a problem solving thing, and look at his approach, and you can use that approach in solving a whole lot of different things. In fact, before this session, me and Matt kind of went back and forth like, hey, should I present this? Should I present this? So he's showing the custom time intelligence, solve that, but I want you to pick up on the pattern, not be like, oh, I don't use custom calendar, I'm going to tune out, right? So this is
yeah,
good
that's right.
stuff.
This is actually all about the process. This is not
Mm-hmm.
about, I mean, the answer, you can always get an answer, right? Someone can give you an answer, you can get it on Google, whatever. But if you learn the process, it's a bit like the difference between someone giving you a fish and you learning how to fish, right?
Yeah.
So I want to teach you how to fish. I'm trying to teach the process. So, and so I'm sure you do this stuff as well, Avi, but I never write a formula without a matrix. So of course I could do that. So I could come in here and I could right click. Oh, by the way, just some other little tips as I go. I mean, I'll just
Absolutely.
share what
Sure.
I do. But up here on the modeling tab, there's a new measure button and there's a new column button. I never ever use those buttons because it's so easy to put the measure in the wrong table, and then I can't find it. It does my head in. So I only ever create new measures by coming over to the table, deciding which table it's going in, right click and do a new measure. And so now I'm going to write my total sales measure is a sum of the extended amount column. I mean, different ways of writing that formula with the AdventureWorks database.
Okay.
Stick it in. Even there, I need to zoom this up. So the switch theme went GA last month, so that's fantastic. But let me see if I can just bring in my theme file. Okay, and I mean, even that number there, 29,000, I know it's right, but it really doesn't tell me anything because it doesn't tell me if my relationships are correct. So I really want to start with something, and let me go and grab, since we're doing custom time intelligence, I'm going to go and grab the year and bring the year in on rows. And so there we go. We can pretty much see that my formula is working correctly and the filtering is working, etc. Now, just as a little aside, because the whole point about this variables is it's an alternate way of breaking a problem into pieces. So I might just start out and say, well, what over the 4 years, what percentage of sales occurred in 2001? What percentage occurred in 2002, 3, and 4? So I want to know percentage of this number, of this total number. Now, the way well, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Let me show you the cheats way. Whenever I teach DAX, I always say that, hey, there's a cheats way of doing everything. If you want to do it the cheats way, and if that solves your problem, nothing wrong with that. So I could bring in another total sales, and I could come here and I'll go show value as percentage of column. There we go, 22% is in year 2 and so on. So that works, but it's not DAX. It's not wrong, but it's not DAX. And if you want to learn DAX, there's plenty of people that can do this stuff by dragging columns, right? Plenty of people in the world. If you want to be one of the real superpowers, you need to learn the language, right? You need to learn the DAX language. So if I was to break this problem into 2 pieces, I would say, give me this 29 million. If I can get 29 million to appear in the column next to this, then I can divide total sales by 29 million. And so the way to solve that problem is I need to write a formula that will ignore the filter coming from the calendar table. So the reason this number is 3 million is because there's a filter coming from the calendar table. So I would probably write something like this. I call this an interim measure. So I'd say total all year sales. Is this big enough on the screen, Avi? Do I need to zoom in?
Actually, yeah. If you can, let's try that.
Let me see. No, I can't, just because of the way that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got a different screen resolution. So
Okay, no worries.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so total all your sales. So calculate total sales. So before we do the total sales, we want to remove all the filters from the calendar table. All right, so I missed a bracket, but thankfully Power BI helped me out there. So there's my total. This is basically giving me access to this total. It's removing any filter coming from the calendar table. And then the last thing I can do is I can write my final measure, which is percentage of all year sales equals divide total sales by total all year sales. All right, so this is the way I always used to write formulas, and it's not wrong.
Yeah.
And it helps you break the problem down into pieces. And so I think it's a really good idea. There is one problem with this approach, and that is that this measure here, total all year sales, is actually completely useless. You wouldn't ever use that anywhere else in your model.
Yeah, I agree. So, to pipe in really quick, yeah, I mean, I talk about it often and I say build it in Lego blocks. That's how I envision it, like I build it in Lego blocks. And often that total all your sales, I would hide it because I didn't want somebody to use it by mistake. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't
exactly.
It
So
was
you
just
could
a
just
means to
right
an
click
end.
and hide. Yeah, exactly right. But the reason we do that this way is to break the problem into pieces. Right, so let me just redo that. And how much time we got? It's like 1/4 past the hour. How much time we got, Avi? Just so I got a good sense of.
Well, these
We
usually
got like
run
40.
at least for an hour. Yeah, so you
Okay,
have time.
all right,
Frankly, I was
all right.
thinking, man. I mean, I don't want to keep you too long, so I know I scheduled it for you for 45 minutes, so you can pace
Okay,
it
all right.
quicker
So
if you like,
we're good.
or or
Very
you
good.
stated, yeah.
We can chat about other stuff as well. All right, so here we go. So let me redo that using variables, right? The
Yeah.
new world is here. So I would do a new measure. Now, whenever I use variables, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do your Lego block thing, if I could refer to it that way. So I'm going to solve the first piece of the problem, then the second piece of the problem, then the third piece of the problem, and then I'm going to glue it all together and
Perfect.
present the answer.
Yeah. Now
Now,
now I'm thinking
what
of
I like
now I'm thinking of eating an elephant. How do you eat an
exactly
elephant a bite at a time, right? All right, cool.
exactly. Now, so whenever I do this, I don't like to give my measure the final name because I sort of get confused then because
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be the final thing until right at the end.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to rename it. So I like to call it work in progress or something like
Got it.
that. And the variable syntax, Avi, I'm just wondering, what if I'm wondering if I just change my screen
Don't worry.
resolution.
I can zoom in at least for the YouTube
Oh,
crowd.
okay.
I can zoom in on my side. So
All
go
right.
ahead and
So
do
you
it.
happy?
Just to let you
All
know,
right.
there's a
Don't
slight
break
lag.
anything.
I'm not sure why there's a slight lag between the audio and the video. Oh, cool.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
It looks like you did switch screen. Do you think is it gonna?
No, I think it's the same. All
Okay,
right,
cool.
I
Yeah.
don't want to break it. Okay, so here we go. So the first
Yeah.
thing, variable syntax, it always comes in pairs, variable and return. So, I mean, in its simplest
Hmm.
form, I can define a variable equals one. Actually, I got to give it a name. So my variable, using my is just really a way of making sure that there's no you're not using any keywords.
Yeah.
In fact, I noticed the developers put an underscore in front of it. So if you ever seen any of the auto-generated
Yeah.
variables, they always, in fact, they have a double underscore. I find it pretty annoying actually, but someone might hear that. But yes, I just use my. So my variable equals one, and then I can return that variable, return my variable. And
Hmm.
so, that in its simplest form, and then I'll stick that into my matrix. And so there's the, okay, so we're going to do this problem. So in this case, what I would do is I would say, well, full year sales equals calculate total sales where all calendar. All right. And then now to test this,
Yeah.
I just go return full year sales.
Got it.
All right, so
So,
I'm getting the same outcome. I'm getting my
yeah.
29.3. I'm checking that it's right, but I don't end up with this artifact. And so now I've got that. I mean, there's two ways I could do this now. I would go
Hmm.
variable result. In fact, in this case, what I'd probably do is I'd just go return divide
So,
total
so let
sales
me,
by.
let me kind of restate it just to make sure I understand. So, you did the same thing which we had done as a separate measure, but in here, the only difference was you did it as a variable, and then you're gonna build
Exactly.
on that, right? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
And so now I need to change my formatting now. And this is going to happen quite often because
Got
you're
it.
jumping between dollars and percentages.
Got it. Got it.
And so now this looks good. Once it's right, I can say this is my percentage of all years too. I won't worry about the typo. And yeah, so I say this all the time. I say I'm not going to worry about the typo, but I'm just OCD. I can't live with it. All right. So there we go. Percentage of all years too, and there's the answer. And the other thing that you get here is you get a bit of, if you give your variables good names, it really helps with the debugging process, right? Because the
Indeed.
names become the documentation.
Oh, big time.
Also, not forgetting that you can put comments inside your variables. There's a few ways of doing it, but double slash is
Hmm.
the way I do it. So this is the removes filter from calendar table. Just by putting stuff in like that inside your variables or inside your formulas really
Yeah.
makes them easier to debug. I'm actually amazed. Sometimes I'll help a customer and I'll come back in 3 months' time and they say, I've got a problem with this formula. I look and I say, this is not a very good formula. Who wrote this formula? And I say, oh, you did. And I go, oh, I got no idea how this formula works, right? And so it takes a few extra minutes to
Yeah.
document and to
Oh,
put some
okay.
comments in. But I
So,
tell you what. it can really help if you
I
do that.
know. So I graduated from college certain in my mind that my destiny was to become a tester. That's well, the path I knew, that you started as a tester and
Tester.
nobody would let you code, and then you became like a junior programmer and then programmer, senior programmer, team lead, and project manager. That was the ultimate. I never imagined anything beyond that. Now I never actually ended up walking on that path, but I've hung out enough around developers to know that, to get the sense that that is exactly what I feel is like a key telltale of a good or a great developer, right? I mean, good developers, they all can write good code, but great developers, they would always be diligent about documentation. So yeah, always a
Yeah.
good tip to
So you
pick
get
up.
payback in a time in the future.
Big time,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's a simplistic example, and I thought it would be useful to start with that just to show you the
Yeah,
old way. There's nothing wrong with the old way,
got it.
but but encapsulating all your code into the one measure also makes it easier to debug and trace and tidier and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But in this simple case, there's limited value. But let's do something more interesting.
Yeah,
So,
actually, why don't we do a quick pause and let's check in
yeah,
first with the Learn Power BI folks who are on the phone.
okay.
If you had any
Mhm.
questions, thoughts, comments so far, and I'll also scan the YouTube ones. Okay, I'll do quick shout outs if that's okay. So I see Guy, Gene, Sam. Good to see you guys again. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Bobbin is here. Oh gosh, the magma running, was that Abhishek? I think it was Abhishek. Jeff says hello. John is here. Alan Jones, Clarkson, Amanda, SK, Jen Abel. Did I already say that? Peter, you're on there. That's great. And Ravi, Fozzie. I don't know how to say it. Fozzie Bear. Oh gosh. And Gabor, and I see Godson, Ankush, and Theodore. So good shout out to all of you guys. So on the phone, were there any thoughts, questions, comments? Or are you ready for the next thing? Oops, what did I do? Okay, we're back. All right, so phone looks like we're good. Mm, okay, Theodore had some comment, but I'm gonna come back to that. It looks like in a question around blanks and stuff. So we'll come back to that, guys. So Matt, take us forward. I mean, I can
Okay, let's
already
keep
see,
going.
even in this simple scenario, that it can simplify your life, avoid you having these straggler measures. But show us the next thing.
Okay, so let's do a custom time intelligence. And hey, you notice with this new UI, so when you sort of, I'm used to clicking at the top on this heading, and it's a little bit hard to
Yeah.
drag this around now. But
Yeah, my
anyway,
trick is,
it's
you know,
quite nice.
that things where it lets you pop out in the three dots. That's what I go for.
The ellipsis.
Uh,
Okay, and that
or
works.
that
Okay, there
pop
you go.
out button. You can drag that, but you're right. It
Okay,
bugs me a
there's
little.
a tip. Everyone's got a tip. Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. All right, now what is really, really important whenever you write time intelligence functions is you must set up a time progression on your screen. You cannot successfully test a time intelligence function unless you have a progression of time on the screen. So I've got year here, so I've got a matrix. I'm going to bring in my month name, and I'm going to drill down using the one with the little horizontal bars. That's the one that keeps the hierarchy. And here we go. Oh, I've got my month names not sorted. So let me do a sort by column, sort by month number of year.
Okay.
And so here we go. July 2001 is the first month, and we're going to work all the way through. And so that's all good. And by having this time progression on the screen, when we test and measure, we can actually see if it's progressing as we expected.
Mm-hmm.
So my objective now, I'm going to write a rolling 90-day total. Right. So this is actually something you probably could use an inbuilt time intelligence function with dates in period or
Mm-hmm.
dates between. I can never really remember which one. I tend not to use them very much. But let's do the custom time intelligence pattern. And so I'm going to do a new measure in my sales table, and I'm going to start off with work in progress again. And okay, what are we going to do? So the first thing I need to do is I sort of need to be able to determine what is the last date that's currently on the screen. So like for December here, the last date is going to be the 31st of December, 2001, right? So I need to write a measure that will tell me what the last date is, because I need to know what the last date is,
Mm-hmm.
and then I need to go back in time 89 days And then that's the period that I want to get my sales for. So I'm going to say my, now here's that thing. I want to call it last date as my variable, but last date is a function. It's a reserved word. So let me follow the developers. Last date is equal to, and there's a few ways, max of the calendar date would be one way of doing it. And then let's return, I don't like that little underscore because you've got to remember to type it. Return the last date, and let's stick it in and have a look.
All right.
So there we go. I might just, yep, so here we go. So December, the last date's the 31st of December. November, the last date is the 30th of November, and so on. So that's it. I mean, in its simplest form, that's the first part of the time intelligence pattern. So that's the last. So I want all sales up until the 31st of December. And of course, this is going to work whether I'm at the month level of granularity or the day level. It's still going to work fine.
Got it.
All right. So now I want to go back in time, and I want, what's the date that I want to start from? So if this is the date I want to finish on, what's the date I want to start from? So I'm going to go variable start date is going to be the last date, which is that one, subtract 89 if I want a rolling 90-day total, because I'm going to keep the last date plus another 89 dates.
Yeah.
And so now let me return the start date and just make sure that that looks about right. Now it's going to be a bit of a guess here, but so December, the last date was 31st of December. The first date's the 3rd of October, November. So that sounds about right. I believe that's right. I don't think I need to test that anymore. So now I've got my start date and my end date. What I need to do is put a filter on my calendar table so that I've got 90 days in the calendar table, because then I can apply that filter using calculate and get my total for 90 days.
Got it.
So what I might do now is I'll do another variable. Now, here's an interesting thing about a variable. A variable can be a table. It doesn't have to be a scalar value, right? So I can write variable my filtered table. All right, so the table that I want to use is going to be filter. I'm going to write filter calendar, where calendar date is greater than or equal to the start date, and calendar date is less than or equal to the last date. All right, so that's all great. But now I've got a problem. I've got a problem because I can't return. If I try and return my filtered table now, I'm going to get an error. Excuse me, because my filtered table is a table, and you can't put a table inside a matrix.
So you can have a variable return a table, but you can't. That can't be the output of the measure. That's not. Can't
a variable can have a table can be stored in a variable, but you can't return that as the result. So in order to test this, I'm going to count how many rows there are in my table. That'll tell me if it's working.
Yeah. So I expect 90, right?
I expect 92. Now, look, you might have realized that's a deliberate mistake that I made. But it's not working. The point is that part of the function that I was writing is not working. I'm expecting 90 days to appear all the way through here, and I'm not getting 90 days. I'm getting 30 days. So I've done something wrong here. And what I've done wrong is I forgot to wrap an all function around the calendar, right? Because I'm getting a filter here on month and year. I have to remove that filter first, so that I can go back in time and pick up the extra day. So, but the point is, by writing a variable this way, I'm testing each step of the way, and I can see immediately before progressing that I've got a problem. So I'm going to swap that out, and now I can see that it is working. I'm getting 90 days, but not until September, which, when you think about it, makes perfect sense, right? Because in the first 2 months of my of time, I don't have 90 days. So if I was to use these first 2 months, I'm going to get an error. So, all right, so now I've got my filtered table. So what I really need to do is I only want to return a result if I've got 90 days. So I'm actually going to promote this now to a variable. I'll say variable, this will be, total days. My typing equals count rows. And now I can return if total days, what do I need? Equal to 90, then I'm going to return total days.
Got it. Otherwise, it doesn't apply, and you're not going to return it.
Otherwise, I want a blank. Okay, so there we go. So, but see how this problem is evolving, right? I mean, I haven't even got to the end state yet, but
Yeah.
what I've been able to do is I found the first state, the last state. I've created a filter table that I can use inside my function. I've discovered I made an error, so I fixed the error. I then discovered that I was going to have a lead-in problem, so I've fixed the lead-in problem. So
Mm-hmm.
now what I need to do is I actually need to do the calculations. So this is the rest of the pattern. So I've got, so let me call it rolling 90. I can just use the calculate total sales, but wrong one, total sales. But before I calculate the total sales, I need to apply my filter. And because my filtered table is a variable, that's all I have to do. I just type in my filtered table. And
Wow.
that's the same as passing that entire filter function here into the calculate. And now, of course, I don't want to return total days. I want to return rolling 90. And so let's see how we go there. Looking pretty good. So what I might do now is I'll come up and put some, I'll put the same formatting. I won't bother about, I'll just do the same as my total sales just so that we can see. You really should test this stuff in Excel or some other way.
Yeah.
In this case, I would probably just quickly do an export data and open it up in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, really to test this, because there's different numbers of days in the month, you really need to go back and grab the days. So let's actually just do that. Just go and make sure that this is working. So if I bring the date in here and I drill down to another level,
Yeah. I mean, I would
oh, look at
say
this.
I agree. I do like debugging or kind of crossing like this. I prefer it in Excel. But yeah, you can get by with exporting it or some other way as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so I drill down again. So here we go. So we've got nothing coming for the first couple of months. And then
Mm-hmm.
on this day here, it starts to kick in. And of course, I could export this and do a test
Yeah, count
and make
90 days
sure it
and see
doesn't.
if it matches up.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Perfect.
but yeah, so that's pretty much it. And so we've got this nice, easy to read. I should rename this now. So this is my rolling 90 days. And so rolling 90-day sales is great. And now that I've got that, I mean, let me just come over here and throw in a line chart. Rolling 90 days. And I might put my date on the axis. Turn this over to the date. I haven't done this before. And this is adventure work. So, it's not always, there's not, not always great
Yeah.
insights in some of this data.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I wish it was.
um, but But also maybe a dual axis chart would be quite nice too. So I could put the line here and then I can bring the actual day sales. So I bring total sales in as the column
Yeah.
and even flip the charts. So there's a second axis here somewhere. I don't do this a lot. Does anyone know where the second axis is position? Oh, that must be it.
I think it's so you want to drop another measure on it, right? So go
Yeah,
back to
I
the
want
go back to
to
the
total sales
fields. I think it's in the fields. I'm pretty
column.
sure.
Column value. Yeah, I think I've got it right. I think I just put it in the wrong spot. So there's our daily sales in the column chart, and then this black line is the rolling
Rolling
90
90, and it
days,
smooths it out.
and so
Perfect.
it's on the other. Yeah, and it smooths it out, and so
Yeah.
just look at the insights that comes from this now though. So you can see that here we had this upward trend in the business right through till sort of
Uh-huh.
July 2002, and
Yeah.
even though you can see sort of lower days down the bottom here, you
Yeah.
can see the rolling impact here. In fact, another thing that you could do on this rolling 90 days, and I often talk about the iterative process. So you load some data, you do some modeling, you build a visual, and then you build the visual and go, do you know what? I just had a great idea.
Uh-huh.
Rolling 90 days is great, but what about average daily sales over the last 90 days, right? So instead of, because 90 is orders of magnitude 90 times bigger than a daily sale. But
Yeah.
what if I just divided my rolling 90 days by 90? Then it would give me the average
Daily
daily
sales.
sales over the last 90 days. So then I'd be able to know exactly whether today's sales were above or below the
Yeah.
average for the last 90 days. So I can just come in here. I might keep, in this case, I'm going to keep that measure because I think it's still got some, oh no, it's still got some merit in its own right. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to do a new measure and I'm going to reuse it. Incidentally, these, I didn't talk about this before, but these variables are local to the measure. So so you can't reuse this variable inside another measure. It's
Yeah. So
only
there's
got
no
a
concept
life.
of a global variable, is it?
No, I mean, it'd be nice if we could have that. I think that'd
Yeah.
be a good thing from the team. So let's call this the rolling um, daily, average daily sales. Average daily, I'm making this up if you can't tell. Average daily sales
All good.
over the last 90 days. All right. So, and because I've got this all broken down, what I just need, I mean, in its simplest form, I would just have to take this rolling 90 and divide it by 90, of course. So that's going to give me,
Mm-hmm.
instead of a factor 90 times higher. And
Yeah.
then if I stick this one in and I'll put it down here and I'll remove my 90 days. And now I actually don't need two axes because they're both on the same
On the
scale,
same
right?
scale.
Yeah, so I can position this on the left axis. I mean, you're going to get a similar pattern. Let me just put a filter here. Let's
Yeah.
just pick up 1 year. So 2003 is a pretty good year in my experience because you've got, what am I doing here? Total sales, date. Let me bring year onto the visual level filter and advanced basic 2003, just so that I've got something better. So yeah, so now you can basically see which months are above the average, which ones are below the average. And, so
Yeah.
a new insight which wasn't previously available. There's another thing that just sort of occurred to me actually, and that is that remember how I filtered out the first 90 days?
Yes.
So because
Really
until I
heavily.
had 90 days, the rolling 90 day didn't make any sense. But now, after 80 days, I've got rolling 80 days. So
Mm-hmm.
I could even modify this and instead of dividing it by 90, I could divide it by
The count
this
of
total
days
days, right?
available.
Yeah. So after 30 days, I divide it by 30. After
Yeah.
60 days, I divide it by 60.
Yeah.
And so I can just, instead of hard coding it by 90, I can just divide it. In fact, I don't need this if anymore, right? So what I'll do is I'll just
Yeah.
say divide the rolling 90, rolling 90, I'll divide it by the total days. And so in the first 90 days, it's going to be less than 90 days, but I still get a number, which is the average daily sales for all the data that I have. And then once
Yeah.
we hit 90 days, it locks in from
Yeah.
there. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. And as we both said up front, the actual formula is not important.
Mm-hmm.
This is
It's
not
an
about the
approach.
formula. It's about the process
Yeah.
and
Got
the
it.
process of breaking the problem down.
Yeah, man, love it. I mean, it's the second time I've seen you present it this way. I liked it the first time. I like it even more, I guess now. And what I really enjoyed, Matt, was, and I hope you guys did too, is the process. And frankly, you saw how Matt kind of had this idea in his head that I'm going to do it, and he defined that. But then he went off on the tangents, and he said, well, maybe I can handle the days which were didn't have the full 90 days, and he kind of did that really quick. And you can go off on different paths from here. Like maybe you do this and you say, well, maybe 90 is not the right number. Should I try 30, 60, 90? Oh, can I have the user selected? And then you do a disconnect a slicer. So you can go on
Yeah,
all
that's a good
these
idea.
paths. But the thing is, that's why we both love this tool, is that it makes all of that so accessible and easy. Pursuing those paths is instant, and as an analyst, you're in here, you're just working, and it just takes a few minutes more of work to kind of put that in place, as opposed to whatever cycle you followed earlier, right, where you were kind of lost in a maze of formulas, and asking that next question became harder and harder. and yeah, so that was the old life, and now you can just go on this happy exploration path, like, let me try this, what about this? And not everything is going to work, but you can always kind of experiment. So Matt, that was great, that was really amazing. I did see some comments, online on YouTube. If you liked it, give Matt a thumbs up. Just type in and let me know what you thought about that. uh, on the phone, what do you guys think? If you have any questions, let me pick on a few people.
I'm just playing with your idea of this time horizon while
Okay, got it. So on the phone, I have Sujo, Steve, Samuel. Steve, let me pick on you, my friend. What did you think about variables? Have you used variables? And yeah, what was your thoughts about Matt's approach?
Yeah, I love this approach. I've used them a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because I'm relatively new to DAX, and when I first would see some what I would say complicated measures that were written by other people that I just wanted to use,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what was going on,
Yeah.
and I really like the decomposition into little pieces that I can understand each one and then put them together. So I really this is something that I really appreciate. I really do.
That's great. Awesome, man. Thanks
excellent.
for sharing that. Uh, so on the phone, I would love to know if which one of you actually on YouTube as well. So type in and let me know if you've already used variables. Uh, so let me know that. And what I'll say is I have used variables, but again, loved Matt's approach. I don't think I quite used it in this manner. So gosh, yeah, I mean, we're hearing a lot of kudos. So Sam says priceless, and boy, I know Sam. Sam, he won the global Power BI hackathon or something. So that
Oh,
coming from
nice.
Sam means a lot. Jeff says great presentation. I'll be putting this to use right away. Thanks, Matt. Amazing session, says Abhishek. Peter Linden likes it. Really cool. Oh yeah, so I knew this was going to come up. So can we get the file? Can you, whatever is the easiest way?
Sure, sure.
Perfect. So
Yeah, yeah.
on
So
YouTube,
maybe should I just post it up on YouTube or something? Or
yeah, or so we'll definitely make sure that in the video notes, now or kind of later, we have the link amongst all the other links to Matt stuff. So again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the call. Let me mention that again. So in the video description, you would find a link to his website, his blog, his courses, his book. Go check all of that out. I mean, clearly you saw his content, and you know, again. Me and Matt, we kind of have that in common. We both take that approach of kind of simplifying stuff. So every time I've heard Matt, he always has this, he kind of makes things simple. And I love that. I do believe in that that this stuff, when it comes down to it, it's not inherently complex. It's sometimes how you approach it. So I love kind of Matt's approach. So great. Check out all of his stuff.
so let me
Mm-hmm.
do this, Avi. I'm going to I might just do like a little mini blog, and that way I can link the YouTube video on my blog as well, and I'll
Perfect.
post my
And link the
workbook
file.
on there.
Great.
So yeah, so come to my blog, and it'll be as soon as the YouTube video is available, or which is now, right? It's real time. So
Yes.
I'll link it up, and you can download it from there. And I'm going to go and add this time horizon thing, that idea that you had, Avi, too, so where the user can move a slider and change the time horizon. I like that idea as well.
All right, great. All right, terrific. So let's so on the phone, let me check in with you. Oh, there are some comments here. Hold on. How do I do this? Oh, there we go. Wow. So yeah, on the phone, Danley is saying I'll be cleaning up my models after this. Um, Michael's asking about, is Microsoft going to make global variables? I feel like I have heard Casper mention it, but as well, these guys always have a long queue of things, so I don't think there's a time commitment. I do feel that it's on their radar. I feel like I have heard Casper mention it, so we'll see. Yeah, so Danley, again, she's talking about, I have so many measures, and now she can have this kind of variable approach. Um, all right, Heather is saying I have used variables, but for cases where I need the same measure twice with small variations, so that I can just change the variation I need. All right, that's cool. All right, Danley thanks. Thanks to Avi and Matt. Awesome. It was good. Let's go on YouTube. If you guys have any questions, um, people like the work in progress idea. Um, yeah, boy, people definitely loved it. Peter says this could make getting my head around the hard parts of DAX so much easier. Literally do one piece at a time. Cool, Matt. So I didn't see any kind of specific questions. Lots of kudos. So I'll ask you one, which is somewhat close to my heart, and I'm gonna go back to what you said, kind of in the intro, and you had dragged a column over, and you said that's a cheats way of doing it. That's not really DAX, but it's okay, right? And yeah, I try not to judge people either because gosh, I knew where I was when I started, and yeah, it's all good. I don't want people to be like, oh, gosh, I should be doing the way Avi and Matt and all of that stuff. Uh, and then there is what I see people is that sometimes they don't even define use measures, right? And fine, that's the level that they are at. And sometimes people are in the mode where they do either a lot of copy paste or do a lot of trial and error, right? So let's say, oh, some didn't work. Let me try some X. Or, oh, what if it didn't work? Let me put a calculator around it, So things like that. So that's trial and error. And sometimes they would do copy paste. So of course there are a lot of patterns out there and you can Google it and it's like, oh yeah, look, this person is solving it this way. But of course, sometimes if your situation is slightly different, you would copy paste, but it wouldn't work for you. So clearly there is a point A, where some people are starting out, and dude, it's okay to drag a column. I mean, I give them permission, right? And then there's a point where clearly they need to dive into DAX, and it's going to serve them best if they just dive in and understand some of the contexts that we talk about and teach in our courses, row context, filter context, things like that. Where do you think that point is? Do you think there are any telltale signs where users can say, oh shoot, I'm starting to hit these walls, I need to just dive in and get a better understanding instead of just flailing around? What's your take on that?
Like when do people generally hit that wall? That's the question, right? So,
yeah, can they
sorry,
self-diagnose? Can they say,
yeah,
oh, I'm at this level, now I'm
yeah,
ready for that, now I need it. Otherwise, if I don't
okay,
get it, if I don't get the understanding of that, get some training or something like that, then
yeah,
I would kind of take the slow
yeah.
path, be struggling for a while.
It's interesting, and I think the classic symptom is, and you sort of alluded it to before. You type in a formula and you put that last bracket in, and then you sort of cross your fingers and you hit enter. Right. So I think that's the clue. All right. And I think a couple of people commented before about copying some stuff or looking on the web and not really understanding the formulas. And, I mean, that's just the natural progression. We've all done it. I mean,
Yes.
I was in exactly the same position. The only
Yes.
difference between me and the people that are starting out that you just talked about, Avi,
Uh-huh.
is I'm just ahead of them. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
a couple of years ahead. But I was exactly the same. I had exactly the same problems.
Yeah.
So I think that I think if you enter that formula and cross your fingers and you enter, then I think you're at the stage where you could benefit from some more learning. And I actually had some just done 2 days training here in Sydney, and I was having a chat with a couple of the students there, and and people are asking for seconds, so like follow-up training courses, like what's the next training course that you can offer me, because this was really great. And what I've actually discovered is that the follow-up training course needs to be almost the same content as the first training course.
Ooh. Oh boy.
And the issue is that when you learn, and when people come to my classes and I teach them stuff, the people that are brand new, you just cannot absorb everything that I say.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a classic example. So I'll teach about filtering behavior in the table, right? So I'll teach people that. And then I'll see that same person, 6 months later, and I'll say, oh, and it's the filtering behavior. And they go, I get it now. Wow, I wish I'd known that. I say, well, actually, I taught you that in the class,
Yeah.
But if you don't have the mental model to attach the learning against some real world experience, it's very difficult to absorb the gravity of what it means. And so it's almost like you got to learn, and then you got to go and use it for 6 months, and then come back and learn again.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you'll pick it up the second time.
You know, I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. And sometimes, you know, it's hard for me to put myself in back when I was starting and struggling. Although, I mean, I work intimately with my students, so that helps. But I can also relate to it because what I've been doing as an entrepreneur, and so in that community, there are some lessons which I've heard so many times, but they didn't sink in the first time, right? I mean, I had to listen to it again and had to be at that level. I had to be open to receiving it. And I think DAX, Power BI, sometimes it works the same way. Uh, okay, let me see if there are any questions. Boy, DAX, the mention of DAX Formatter, that's a great tool. We pretty much all use that. Oh, this is a good comment. Alan is speaking to Laura, but it's a good one to bring it up. So are variables more efficient? Right? I mean, so we saw
Ooh,
one
that's a great
benefit
question.
where it makes things easier. Peter talked about like, oh, hard DAX, I can wrap my head around it, do it a piece at a time. But does it make it more efficient?
Absolutely, it does. That's a great question, insightful question, because what variables do, and let's take this. Obviously, I made a bit of a, I was just doing a bit of a change uh, in the formula here. So I've basically deployed the rolling 90 days sort of while we were talking. So you can see now I can click on my slicer and say, this is a rolling 15 days, a rolling 17
That's
days, a rolling
insane.
62 days.
Oh
I
my
really
gosh.
love that idea.
Let's just stop there. But guys, this is what I was talking about, right? That, you know, we always had these questions come up, but a lot of us get trained to squash it. I've seen an organization where people have been trained to just dip your life, nah, that's going to take us 6 months, it's going to be too hard. No, right? And here, you know, while we were talking, kind of Matt just did it on the side. Great.
Yeah. So, I mean, all right. So I'm getting distracted. So the question is it more efficient? So if we had
Yes.
let me do, I might just have to write another little quick, test measure. How many people got test measures that like test? So you do a variable, you know, my check equals total sales. And then we'll go return. This is a garbage measure, but I'm trying to
Okay.
demonstrate a point. If my check is greater than 100, then give me my check times 2. Otherwise, give me my check. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that we define the variable once inside at the start of the formula, and then we're referring to that variable 3 times in the return statement.
Yeah.
If you were to use total sales without variables, total sales would get executed 3 times. Or
Yeah.
potentially, maybe I should back off a little bit from that, but
Yeah.
because I can't say for sure that it would, because there's always improvements being built into the engine. But I can tell you for sure that if you write it as a variable, it will only get executed once.
That's a good
And
point. Yeah, I mean, that one is for
that has
certain.
definitely been built into the tool, right? So,
Yeah.
and so variables can make your code more efficient because it executes that variable once
Yeah.
and then reuses it many times. Now that could be a problem as well, because just something that you need to be aware of. If I was to say, let me do something different. So remember that table I did before? My now let me do this. If I was to write calculate my check, filter all calendar where calendar year, oh, it's wrong calendar. Oh, I don't like this little IntelliSense filter. Oh, let me just do all calendar, right? So this is basically that that one that I did before, which is giving me the total. Now, this is not going to work because the variable my check was defined up front, and a
Got it.
variable cannot have a change. You can't change the value of a variable during execution. And
Got it.
so now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put a filter and then change my check, but that's not going to happen. My check got evaluated up here. It
Yeah.
got assigned total sales. This is not going to change the behavior. So you just need to be
Yeah.
aware of that.
That's a really excellent point. That's a great thing to keep in mind. I was kind of thinking in my mind, well, variables are so awesome. Is there some scenario where we shouldn't use them? And you know, that could be one of them. That's great.
Yep.
All right, man, Matt. Well, you spent close to an hour. Let me do a last check on the questions, and I'll let you go. I'll probably will still hang out, guys, to monitor some of your questions. But uh, perfect. So Alan is saying variables work really well with KPIs. Ghana Cube, indeed, that's a great channel. All right, all right. Okay, lots of good stuff here. All right, Matt. Thank you so much for your time, my friend. And
Okay,
yeah,
thanks for the
guys.
opportunity. Great to share some tips. See you guys around.
Perfect. And you can find the download file coming soon on Matt's blog.
Yeah.
So go check that out.
I've got some time to kill before the family wakes up, so I'll do it now.
Okay, awesome. All right,
Okay,
take care, Matt.
great
Thank you.
to see you, Avi.
Thanks,
See you
Matt.
guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
All right, let's see. Whew. Oh my gosh, that was really epic, guys. I just want to kind of bask in that a little bit. Let's see. So I'm going to take one more scan at the question. I did want to be respectful to Matt's time, but let's see if there are any other questions or thoughts going on. Love the discussion you guys are having in there. How do I do this? Oops. Webcam. Oh, there it is. Cool. Uh-oh, Matt is calling me. Hold on. I'll have to call him back. Great. So any last questions? Let's do a last call on the phone as well as YouTube. YouTube, if you asked something earlier, just repost and yeah, I'll get to it. How do I do this? Oops. All right, I'm not hearing anything new, so I will see you guys next time. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you're notified whenever we go live to answer your Power BI questions and bring special guests like Matt. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Power on.